All advice given is for general information purposes. All legal cases are different, and you should seek the advice of your own attorney before acting or making decisions. No attorney-client privilege applies to communications on this show, and no attorney-client relationship is created by calling or writing in. Attorney Rominger practices only in Pennsylvania and maintains his primary office in Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
Well, good afternoon. Carl Rominger here, 540-0580. Want to get in on the talk line here. 540-0580 will get you up. I see the phones are ringing already, so we have lots of legal questions, I'm sure. If it's your first time listening to the show, as you may be aware, what we do is we answer your legal questions here live. Whatever we want to talk about. You have a personal injury. You have a neighbor's tree that fell on your car. You want to know who's responsible, what kind of deductible. We talk about all kinds of things. Also, if you want to talk about legal news and those sorts of things, by the way, a little international tidbit here. In Greece today, they arrested about 20 members of Golden Dawn, which is considered a far-right party. There's been some criticism that their logo looks something like a swastika, and they're clearly anti-immigrant, but at least 5 of them were seated members of parliament. Here's my read on it. The fact that they move so strongly against the party who has been not in favor of the European bailouts and the austerity agreements tells me that we're probably going to see more austerity in Greece because we're going to see more benchmarks missed. So just watch for Greece in the economic news. I think we'll see it cropping up again and again, and it's not over down there. Even though we haven't heard about it in a while, things are probably actually worse than they want you to know. 540-0580. Jim, you're on WHP 580. What's going on?
Hey, Carl. Thanks for taking my call.
No problem.
Hey, a few years ago, I loaned some money to a friend of mine. Thought I was doing it right, had a note signed, recorded it in the courthouse. But, of course, with the real estate downturn, the house doesn't cover the loan.
Right.
Now, in the meantime, the gentleman is retired, and he's getting $4,000 a month retirement, but he ceased paying me anything. Is there any way I can go after the retirement since his house isn't worth the note?
The answer is you can't garnish wages in Pennsylvania as a general rule unless it was a landlord-tenant matter. And so, of course, this is not a landlord-tenant matter. It sounds like a mortgage you recorded against the personal loan, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So your only real incentive is to execute a judgment against the house and foreclose. Now, are you a second mortgage or are you the primary?
No, I am the second mortgage behind the mortgage company.
Yeah. Which is why a second mortgage a lot of times isn't worth nearly as much as a first mortgage, and orders of priority are so important. So the only thing you can do is hope the house value goes back up, or B, that he continues to pay down on the primary mortgage, and then eventually build some equity back up in there for you. You could sue him. I mean, you can certainly sue him to enforce the note, and you could potentially foreclose on the mortgage and maybe get his attention. But I don't see it as causing him to necessarily pay because you can't garnish the actual retirement income.
Okay, that's what I was afraid of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
What's his answer? I mean, have you asked him when do you intend to pay, or is he just decided he doesn't have to pay you anymore? I mean, what's his theory?
I think the theory is he just doesn't have just needs the money to pay. He needs his retirement to pay his own bills, and his own bills are more important than my bills.
Gotcha. Well, the only other thing to do in a situation like this a lot of times is to go to him and renegotiate and say, not lower the debt, but say, okay, well, I wanted you to pay X a month, but let's figure out a number that works.
Yeah.
All right, boss.
Well, I was hoping I could go after the retirement, but
I don't think you can now.
Okay, that's what I was afraid of.
All right.
Thanks, Carl. I
Bye.
appreciate your time. Bye.
That's why Pennsylvania has a lower bankruptcy rate than neighboring states where they allow garnishment of wages for regular judgments because that's a big incentive not to pay your bills. Gary, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. The talk line number is 540-0580. What's going on, Gary?
Hi, Carl. Nice to talk to you.
Thanks.
I'd heard an article, or I'd heard on talk radio, and I forgot if it was on Rush or Sean Hannity. Kerry apparently signed some UN treaty on Thursday having to do with some sort of international arms. And I haven't been able to find anything about it. It's been kind of hush-hush about exactly what he signed. And I know they had said that the Senate would have to ratify it.
Right.
For it to be binding. Now, with a Democratic Senate now, is that likely to be ratified?
Well, I think in order to ratify a treaty, I think you still need 2/3 of the Senate, if I remember right. Secretary of State, let's see, here's Secretary of State John Kerry signed an international treaty on arms regulation Wednesday, angering conservative lawmakers and rattling the NRA despite claims the treaty won't infringe on gun rights. What's all the fuss about? The treaty, which took 7 years to get to, would regulate 70 billion global trade in conventional arms. It's the largest exporter in the world, blah, blah, blah. Supposed to say treaty sends a global, blah, blah, blah. The point and part language at the very beginning of the document includes small arms and light weapons and worry this could cover firearms owned by Americans. According to the treaty, the international sale of weapons, blah, blah, blah. But the treaty also advocates keeping data of arms purchased. I don't know.
I know it was something that Obama was pushing, really,
Yeah, the treaty threatens individual firearm ownership with invasive registration scheme. So,
now the Democrats would need a lot of Republican support for that to pass for 2/3 in the Senate.
Yeah, they would. Now, of course, the position that Kerry took was it doesn't regulate domestic sale of weapons. I think the problem is, what do the definitions really mean? And so that's going to be one of the concerns. And, of course, as you know, and I've said this before many times on this show and when I filled in for Bob Durgan over the years, the devil's always in the details. You can tell me that the law doesn't apply in these situations, but the problem is somebody may reinterpret the definition down the road a little bit, particularly a court, and then you end up in a problem where suddenly it does apply to my 9mm handgun or my
exactly. And I was thinking that's a small way to chip away, at a Second Amendment right. So.
Right. And so as a general rule, I mean, I understand the principle behind the treaty, by the way, is to do things like, for instance, we as Americans, when we sell, let's say we're going to sell 10 million submachine guns to some country, we're supposed to think about, under the treaty, for instance, analyze whether it could be potentially used for genocide. I.e., basically under the treaty, countries aren't supposed to just willy-nilly sell small arms to anybody, okay? But small arms is the question. What are small arms? And the regulation of small arms under the treaty, does it include my guns, or does it include... And, of course, the fallback you'll get is the one you get from the left or the Democrats or the pro-anti-gun people who say, oh, well, it won't affect hunting weapons because they all assume that we hunt with a flintlock or a single-shot 22, or an over and under 12 gauge. They don't seem to equate the fact that my semi-automatic Benelli is very similar to a assault shotgun.
It's funny that they pinpoint small arms, and yet he has no problem selling F-16s to the brothers.
Well, and those do already come under some other treaties. So the idea here is, I mean, here's the answer: you sell 10,000 guns to a banana republic, and the dictator goes out and shoots up the citizenry with it. So there's a legitimate concern they're trying to regulate. The problem is it's not clear that that's all the situations it applies to. And frankly, if I had to guess, that's not all the situations they want it to apply to.
I noticed a lot of the major countries did not sign. Russia and China didn't sign it.
Right, because they're smart.
Syria, Iran.
And here's the other thing. Who really wants to disarm the U.S., right? Besides our president, our enemies would love to see less weapons here. Should you ever have to, go to toe-to-toe with America for some reason, or you feel the need to invade someday, the less firearms on the street, the harder the insurgency is going to be.
Yeah, you definitely don't want those 300 million guns out there.
Right, exactly. And so now, will they ever legitimately be able to retrieve them? I don't think in our lifetimes. Even if they tried, would they be able to get most of the guns off the street? In fact, there was an article in the Atlantic a while back discussing how the concept of banning guns is really just foolhardy, because even if you could put legislation in place, you're never going to ban guns, and therefore criminals will always have. Imagine that.
Right. Yeah.
And that therefore policymakers should think more in terms of, just know that weapons are going to be present. Therefore, don't create gun-free zones and assume that causing law-abiding people not to carry guns there. And the guy wrote an interesting article because he said, I'm not pro-gun, I'm not anti-gun. I really could care less about guns. I just started researching it, and it's pretty clear that anti-gun policies or gun-free zones just don't work because it denies the reality that they'll always be filled with guns because there are just so many guns that criminals will always have access to them.
Right.
And therefore, you can't create false policies that lead to more harm. And then he pointed out how some other states adding concealed carry permits to millions of people did not cause any spike or change in the murder or gun violence rate in terms of domestic violence between spouses or anything like that. And there were no random guys pulling their guns at the mall and just shooting randomly because they happen to be able to carry concealed. And in fact, if anything, the literature suggests that some of the random crime went down a little bit. So anyhow, point being is, who wants to disarm us is our enemies, and sometimes our enemies are on the inside. But
Exactly.
But who really wants us disarmed in the long run? And it's like this global warming thing. Who wants the U.S. to work on dialing back their economy? Well, the rest of the world does, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so all these things that these do-gooder John Kerry, Barack Obama, Al Gore, Bill Clinton people are into, well, they jet around in their own private jets, by the way, is the general decline of the American economy to increase their wealth, but under the rubric of global warming. And I actually don't think sometimes they're smart enough to realize that the reason that other countries sign on board and will play along with stuff like this is because they realize it hurts us more than it hurts them, and they're playing catch up.
Yeah.
All right, I got to go to break.
Okay. All right, well, thanks for your time, Carl.
All right, man. Thanks. 540-0580. I think I'm back. Oh, boy. Is the sun going to shine at all today? Does anybody know the answer to that? I don't pay attention to the weather when they play it on here. I'm too busy trying to prep for the show. All right, 540-0580. John in Lancaster. What's going on, my friend?
Well, first of all, the sun's shining here. But on the other thing, I was in Philly listening to Dick Morris when this gun thing was being signed on the 25th. And he said everybody should be aware of it. It's an Obama case to get around the Second Amendment and to override the Constitution. And his statement was he researched it and found we have another treaty in place that says by the fact that we signed this, we will abide by it until it is either approved or rejected by the Senate. So essentially, it's in place right now, and our Senate has to reject it formally for it to go out of place. So the president can implement everything by in connection with this treaty.
Interesting. So you're saying that the treaty is by default in force until it's ruled upon. That's
right, and essentially that's on another treaty we signed, and I guess you can find all the details on his website, dickmorris.com or something. But the other question I had was about the Affordable Care Act and insurance.
right.
I'm one of those people that got the letter that said my insurance policy is being canceled January 1st. However, I prepaid my insurance for a couple months beyond that. And I want to know how the U.S. government can override states' rights. Well,
here I can explain that real simple. Insurance, even when you prepay insurance, you don't actually pay it. So anytime insurance is canceled, you get your unused portion of the premium back. So I'll give you an example. If I buy auto insurance for a year and I cancel it after 6 months, I get half my premium back.
Right. But supposedly I thought that insurance can't be canceled by the company unless you don't pay the premium, et cetera, because this is all regulated in the state.
Well, that's an interesting question. What was the policy term?
The policy term was continuous.
Well, wait a minute. No insurance is continuous. So look in your fine print somewhere, and maybe you'll see that it renews monthly or every 6 months or every year. So there'll be a renewal period in there.
Okay.
So I'm guessing you're going to find out that your health insurance renews on a month-to-month basis or some such thing.
And that they can cancel it. Because the implication was on all the policy paraphernalia I've seen is this policy cannot be canceled. We reserve the right to raise the rates once it's done. But essentially, all the stuff previously to this was we can't cancel it unless you don't pay the premium.
Right, but I can't imagine of a perpetuity for an insurance policy, because at a certain point risks will change or things will change, and they may want to get out of that line of business, and then they'd be stuck with what, just you at some point as an insured. So that can't be the whole story. So I would check into the fine print. But I understand what you're trying to say is, if I had a state law insurance contract which under state law couldn't be canceled, how can they cancel it now?
And not only can it be canceled, but they accepted the money, cashed the check.
Well, that's what I was trying to say about insurance, though. When you pay insurance, you don't really bind the same way. In other words, it was nice of you to prepay it, but you don't really get any benefit of that bargain necessarily.
No, and they have the right to change the price, but essentially because of Obamacare, they're canceling the policy.
Right, and that's what you may see. You may see somewhere in the language of the policy what we call force majeure, or a clause that basically says, yeah, by the way, if we have to do this for reasons out of our control or because of regulation we reserve the right to do other things. So there's going to be a lot in the fine print, my friend. That's where I would look. By the way, ratification of treaties. Here's a little summary. In addition to the Appointments Clause of Section 2, Article 2, another advice and consent provision is the same section, called the Treaty Clause, requires approval of two-thirds of the Senate to ratify any treaty with a foreign power that's previously been negotiated and signed by the President. Without Senate ratification, a treaty may not become law. It should be noted that ratification of a treaty is only lawmaking power of Congress. That requires only one house of Congress, i.e. the Senate, for approval. In very limited circumstances, a president might choose to honor a treaty's terms without Senate ratification. However, in this particular instance, the Congress may refuse to fund the executive branch's actions taken in regard to the treaty, effectively preventing them through the power of the purse, and may even prohibit the executive's observance of the treaty through appropriate legislation. So basically what you're saying is, and I think Dick Morris was right, is once the president chooses to act, then the Congress would have to act, so he kind of forces their hand to say no to the treaty, either through the power of the purse or otherwise.
Yeah, we signed some other treaty, is what he found. Some Geneva treaty or something that any treaty we sign, we will take it as if we ratified it immediately, at that date. And regardless of whether and until the Congress rejects it, they will not, it's effectively in place. So the first thing that happens is under that treaty, they're going to make a complete registration of all guns.
Right.
Okay, so that's the first thing that they'll be accomplishing, and they can ban certain guns, anything that's banned in that treaty and stuff like that.
But it is interesting that you point this out. So let's just talk about this for a second so everybody's paying attention. In order to change the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution, you would have to get a constitutional convention together, or you would have to have two-thirds of each house and three-quarters of the state legislature sign on board. To do it by treaty, to effectively add something by treaty that would conflict with the Second Amendment, the president signs the treaty, and the Senate then by a two-thirds majority gives advice and consent, and then it becomes a constitutionally enforceable law.
Right.
Yeah. Interesting. Now,
So,
I don't know the answer. Let's stop for 1 second. I don't know the answer because I don't know if this has ever been litigated when a treaty has been found to be in direct conflict with an amendment, whether that would make a difference or not.
Well, all I know is he was very strong on this. He has something on his website about this, and since he's actually a Democrat and was one of Clinton's advisors, you sort of have to believe that he's concerned about it too. So,
well, Dick Morris is a Republican these days. Yeah.
Okay,
he really is. I smoked cigars with him last fall at an event, and he's definitely a Republican. But that said, he's all about himself too. He's a nice guy, and I think he's really smart, and I think he's right. He has to be watched. But I just don't know what happens when they directly conflict. I mean, maybe that's a question that has to be answered another day. But it is a backdoor. Treaties are a backdoor way of legislating things that if they aren't if they're no constitutional dimension, boy, it's a great way. The president just needs to get two-thirds of the Senate. Well, let's talk about this for a minute. He might not be able to get two-thirds of the Senate right now, but sometimes he might be able to. But the Senate's clearly much more in the president's pocket than, say, the House.
This week.
This week, right. Well, which, by the way, the House right now, after the Senate voted to fund Obamacare by voting for cloture, the Republicans are running scared because they don't actually want to shut the government down and take the blame for it. And so I think this whole thing's going to be a fiasco.
Well, we're all hoping somebody at least wakes up.
All right, my friend, I better take some legal questions.
All right.
All right, John. Let's see. Norma, what's going on over there in Boiling Springs?
Hi. I enjoy your show.
Thank you.
Hey, my question is, about a year ago when my mother-in-law moved out of her house, she had an old antique desk, and she gave it to my husband with a note saying, I gave John this desk, Lillian Holden. She dated it and signed her name. Okay, now we have it here in our possession because she was moving. Now she's visiting her son in California, and she called me the other day, and she says, I've decided to give that desk to John, to her son out there. Can she legally do that since we have it in our possession, and she wrote this note?
Okay, let me back this up. So the note says what exactly?
I gave John the desk of Great Aunt Pansy, and she signed her name.
Okay.
She dated it when
she was the executor?
I don't know who's the executor. She was just moving out of her house into a senior citizens tower. She was selling her furniture or giving stuff away.
Okay, so she's still alive. She's not.
Oh, yeah, she's still alive. Can she
she can't undo a gift.
Okay.
If you, and I don't even know why she put it in writing, but we like to say that you have to prove two things to prove a gift occurred, okay?
Uh-huh.
You have to prove delivery of the item.
Which we have in our possession.
Correct. And you have to prove intent, and the intent to be to give something. So the note is the proof of intent. A lot of times delivery is proof of intent as well, okay? Mm-hmm. The mere act of delivery is very powerful, but nonetheless it cannot be necessarily decisive because people loan stuff to people all the time, right?
Right.
So we look at all the surrounding circumstances. Are you my grandmother, my natural bounty of your affection, blah, blah, blah. But in this case, we don't need to look at any of that. We've got an admission, a party opponent admission that they're giving it to you. So, no, you don't have to do anything with it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, take care.
Know if that had to be notarized.
It doesn't need to be notarized.
Thank you very much.
All right. Yeah, notaries. Let's talk about that when we get back from the break. Let's talk about what needs to be notarized and why. 540-0580. See you guys in a minute. Well, good afternoon. If you're just joining us, 540-0580. I want to talk about notaries for 1 second. People always think things to be notarized. Very few things have to be notarized. A notary stamp is required for certain purposes, transferring titles and deeds and things like that. Sometimes we do require them. But a lot of times the notary stamp is really just proof of signature, and it creates a self-authenticating signature, basically. So when I present a document that has the notary stamp on it and the raised seal, et cetera, then you can pretty reliably believe that that was actually the person who signed it. Whether or not the person signed it is usually whether they agreed to it. So point is, if I sign a contract and it's not notarized and not witnessed, it's still binding. It's just harder to prove that I signed it if I claim I didn't sign it. That's all. So a lot of times the notary is not required. It's just recommended. Dave, you're on WHP 580. What's going on?
Hey, what's going on, bro?
Not too much.
Hey, I was just on the internet here, and it seems like, I guess, Obama has, straight three against him as far as signing that treaty, even if he tried to go through with it. I guess they got him for supplying guns and numerous accounts, as far as deaths over there.
Right.
And what's the deal with Benghazi? I mean, is there a way the United States that we can force that investigation to further go ahead, that they've stalled it?
Well, I mean, theoretically, it should continue to go forward, but the administration holds all the power, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, because they can write and dodge any bullet they want, but as far as us asking for particular things, I mean, there's an order because things have come and passed recently that have happened after Benghazi, but yet he knows he's in trouble. So
every day we depend on our government to tell us that we police ourselves and you can trust us.
Gotcha. All right. That answers that real quick.
Right.
Hey, the other thing, I have the bumper sticker I made, and it says Save USA, and then it says Anti-Obama Nation underneath it.
Right.
With the picture of the president with that red circle and the cross through it. I can't get in trouble for that, right?
I wouldn't think.
I mean, other than the people bitching about seeing it, but...
Right. It's not a direct threat. It's just political speech.
Yeah.
If I say I'm going to kill the president of the United States, That's different than if I say, I wish he wasn't the president of the United States, or I wish he'd be abducted by Martians and flown into space.
It has like the no Obama thing, just anti-abomination.
Yeah, no, I think you can be the abomination. Yeah, I think you can be anti-abomination.
Would you like to be the promoter of this?
Yeah, get us some.
All right, brother, keep up the good work.
All right, my friend, thank you.
Bye.
540-0580. We do have the Obama toilet paper here in studio, so. Pat, you're on WHP 580. What's going on? Pat.
Hi.
What do you know?
Okay, I don't know much. That's why I called you.
Well, you're going to know more, I hope, in a minute.
Okay. I have a problem where we allowed a homeless family to stay with us. It was only supposed to be for a little while. Well, that little while turned into 10 months, and we were not able to get them removed because the police say they have squatters' rights.
Yeah, they've now become your tenant.
Okay, even though they're paying nothing.
Correct.
Okay,
so
now
you have to evict them. You have to give them a 30-day notice, say be out by July 1st, or the appropriate date. And then when they still aren't out, then you can go to DJ court and get an order against them.
Okay, well, here's the problem. We had an encounter, and through the encounter, I got hurt. I got a broken foot, and so on and so on. And since then, they've moved out because the constable came that very night to take Mom and Pop to jail because they hadn't paid fines.
Gotcha.
Okay, now they came today because I did give them a verbal notice back in August to move out by September 1st. That didn't happen, so I sent them a letter telling them I wanted them out by October 3rd. Well, they didn't come back after that incident, and Mom and Pop went to jail. So now they came today, and they want to come back again, and I need to know how long do I have to keep their stuff here, and do I have to let them back in?
Boy. Well, here's the answer. Since somebody physically assaulted you, right? Is that what you're telling me? You got hurt because of something they did?
Right.
I would think from a safety aspect, you could make a claim that you aren't letting them back in on that basis. Now, they might be able to sue you and claim something, but I don't think it's going to go anywhere, and I don't think they would prevail. So this would be one of the rare times where I'd say I wouldn't even give them the time of day. As for keeping their stuff, how much stuff do these homeless people come with?
Well, they came with half of a house full of junk.
Oh, good Lord. What were you thinking?
My husband wasn't thinking.
They seem like such nice people, and they have nowhere to go. What can I do for them?
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Yeah, it's a big mess. What do you do with all their stuff, right? I'm sure.
How long do I have to keep it?
Well, I think you have to make them come get it. Of course, they have nowhere to go. Do they want to move back in?
Oh, yeah, they came today and asked if they could move back in.
They're that crazy?
Yeah, that's insane is what it is.
Wow. Where'd you find them? Like literally on the street, or do you know them somehow?
Well, they were acquaintances of my son, and of course they used that when they came here to ask if they could stay for a little bit.
Right. What's the age differential versus you and your husband?
Well, my husband's retired. He's 68, and they're probably in their 40s.
So this is some young couple taking advantage of you guys.
Yeah, and 3 kids.
Yeah. And they have 3 kids, this couple?
Yes.
Right. And how are the kids? You feel bad for them, I assume.
No, I don't.
No? They're not even good kids, huh?
No, and one is 23, one's 20.
Good Lord. They're all a bunch of shiftless bums.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody works. Nobody wants a job. They can't get welfare because something happened there.
Well, here's the answer. I just wouldn't let them back in the door. I would take all their stuff and get a storage unit, move it there, and tell them they can have it at the storage, give them the lock to the storage unit, and then let them fight it out with the storage unit company.
Can I do that legally? I
think you can. I mean, listen, this property, if you've ever listened to the show before, this abandoned property stuff is always questionable. But you're not as long as you don't destroy their stuff, right? Here's all your stuff. It's at the storage unit 3 miles away. Help yourself to it. Here's the key. It's yours. Now, if they don't want to pay the storage bill, they just got to move the stuff out of there.
Yeah, well, see here, the thing of it is that this stuff was in storage, and I paid a month of the storage, and here I really didn't pay a month. I paid the back month, and that allowed him to bring the stuff here so he could get it out of storage. So even I did that, and I...
Right, you're never getting it back, let's just be honest.
Oh, no, I don't know.
Listen,
I guess we can't sit this stuff outside undercover, huh?
I mean, you could, but then you're at risk if it gets lost, stolen, mutilated, spindled, folded. If there's hanging chads on it, whatever, it will be your fault.
Okay.
All right? Don't ever try to do a good deed again.
No, it'll never happen.
If you see a kid on the side of the road lost, just drive by. If you see a puppy running down the street, just drive by, because obviously you're not going to get rewarded.
No, not here anyway.
Well, right. Listen, you picked up. I keep thinking of Pacific Heights, with Michael Keaton as the downstairs tenant. But here, at least he paid his rent once or twice.
Yeah, they didn't pay anything.
Yeah. Well, but you know what? Here's what I want you to ask yourself. Okay. This is a question and this is not going to help you at all, but this is going to be something to just ask yourself in the future. How do we get in this situation when we look at these people, and it's America, okay? Let's talk about this for a minute. It's America. You can't starve to death here, right? It's really hard to do. You can't really die of exposure here. It's really hard to do. So how the heck is it that there is not one decrepit adult who needs help, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 adult people, essentially, who can't, between the 5 of them, find any way to finance even a place to stay or some food to eat or whatever they need, blah, 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 blah. Let's just talk about it. So maybe they give you a tale of woe, right?
Yep.
But here's my point. Don't buy anybody out, don't buy those kinds of tales of woe at this point. Now, 4 years from now, if we're in the middle of the continuing Great Economic Depression and, 15% of the population is homeless, it might start to make sense, right? But the reality is these guys are probably flop artists. You're probably the 13th, 100th person they flopped in or out of with. And if I was a 20-some-year-old kid and my mom and dad didn't have a place to live, I might go find a place for them to live, but I'd at least find a place for myself, right?
Yeah.
Which just tells you the ethic and the history here.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's a big mess. My answer is don't let them back in. You can't destroy their stuff, so I would have it put into storage. And let the storage company know, get an understanding with them that it's going to be for 1 month, and if these guys come and get it, great. If they don't, then they go through the process and auction it off.
Okay.
All right, good luck. Here's the other problem. These people will hold a grudge, and these people will be litigious, and they will be a pain in your butt, and they will not thank you for one good thing you did for them. I can tell you that already.
That's true.
All right, and good luck with your foot.
Thanks.
Bye. 540-0580. See you after the break. Well, I'm back. Carl Rominger here, 540-0580. That last poor lady. Well, what can you do? All right. Rick, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. What's going on up in Halifax, my friend?
Not too much. It's awful cloudy here today,
I know. Same down here.
We were just on our way back from Wellsville. We were down there shooting Sporting Clays this morning.
Wow, yeah, very nice.
Yeah. So here's my question for you. I have a judgment against my former employer. I took him and won at the district justice level, and then I actually filed with the sheriff's department, and we went through that whole process, and I couldn't get any money out of the deal because he owed so many people money. It was actually the LLC that I filed against.
Okay.
I just got, so now I've got a notice about a bankruptcy hearing, and I have like 2 weeks to respond to this. So I guess my question is it worthwhile for me to do this? It's about $10,000. And here's the deal. Part of this involves criminal case. He's pled guilty in court. He stole some of our 401k money and also a paycheck. That's basically what he owes me.
Right.
And is this worthwhile pursuing, or is the bankruptcy judge going to discharge this?
Well, depending on what your judgment was for, okay? A judgment for fraudulent activity and certain kinds of bad acts is not dischargeable.
Okay.
So that would be the first thought. The second thought, though, is perhaps when you're getting your judgment, it's not well defined exactly what you sued for. And I don't know in the bankruptcy court how much collateral information you'll be able to bring in about that judgment. So I know, for instance, that if a contractor's got a judgment against him for a violation of the Unfair Trade Practices Act, a lot of times that's not dischargeable. But if it's mere breach of contract, it is. But sometimes people bring a contract claim when they could have brought the other one as well. And so how it was actually spelled out, I don't know what happens in a hybrid situation where you say, well, Judge, technically I sued him for breach of contract, but he also violated this. I'm not sure you're allowed to do that at that late date. But on terms of what the allegations, the underlying suit were, if it was he took 401k money, et cetera, that may be enough to prevent it from being discharged on a fraud exception.
Okay. My other question is there any recourse for any of us to go back and sue the brokerage house? Because do they have like an errors of omission policy or something else that we can go after? Is that possible?
And what's the theory there?
Well, that he wasn't putting money into the account. They knew something was wrong, and he wasn't putting money into the account.
Right.
Basically, what he did was he took the money from our paychecks, and then for a greater than 6-month period, didn't deposit in the account.
Right.
And they never notified us. We all figured this out on our own. And
I don't know if they had a duty to know that or not know that, but that's interesting. It may be an issue with the brokerage house. I don't know. I've never actually looked at that before. I mean, what are their duties? Are they supposed to assume that there's ongoing contributions, or are they supposed to assume that there's no wages? How deep do they dig? And I don't know the answer. What their duties are in that instance.
Right.
So,
and for instance, they would know from each of us if we were contributing our own money. They would know that.
Correct.
And if we weren't going to do that anymore, we had to, file a change form with them, which we did at some point when we realized the money wasn't going in. That was the immediate solution. All this was just stop contributing money.
Right.
Until it all got straightened out. Of course, it didn't really get straightened out after that. But at least we didn't lose any more money.
Right. Yeah, so I don't know the answer. I think it's potential something you could look into. I just don't know what their duties were. So.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right, boss. Not the best answers, but we're trying. Seth, you're on WHP 580, calling from Windsor. What's going on, my friend?
Yeah. Hi, Carl. Seth calling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually calling for a client of mine. She bought a house about 3 years ago, and she had the home inspection done. And since then, there's been a bunch of things that have come up that were not listed on the inspection. One of them is the sill above the garage wasn't properly sealed, and the whole sill plate had rotted, and then causing the laminated beams to be rotted. And the house itself is only 8 years old. Is there any recourse she has for that?
Well, let me ask it this way. So the house is brand new, essentially.
Right.
And they bought it used from somebody else?
Correct. She bought it at 5 years old.
At 5 years old, and the inspector at the time, should they have caught these things?
Right.
I mean,
closet doors don't open. It's just, it seems like one thing after another.
But this was 3 years ago, right, that she bought it?
Correct.
And did they have a home inspection at the time?
Yes, she had a home inspection done.
Okay.
Now, there's one thing they had done on a beam in the front of the house that they came and just caulked it. They did real shoddy work, and it's not, it never was fixed, right from the get-go. But...
So, but I'm thinking this, I'm just trying to think this through for a second, and I'm saying in my head, okay, you're saying to me the home inspector should have, so in other words, we're 3 years ago, was everything this bad, or things just gotten worse?
Well, 3 years ago, I think the thing on the garage probably should have been at least noted, but it wasn't. And I don't know. I feel for her because you're looking at several $1,000s, now to try and repair these things.
The homeowner's inspection contract will usually include a clause limiting the damages to what you paid anyhow.
Okay.
But also, their duties to find things are not defined like every hidden thing either. So,
Right.
So that's a little fuzzy. Now, the seller would have to know about the defect in the real estate and fail to disclose it to be responsible. So, on the other hand, maybe if you could prove some defect in the workmanship, we might be getting out past the statute of repose as well to complain about the original contractor even.
Yeah, I know the original contractor, when she did contact him, and he basically said, well, I'll come in and I'll fix the problems, but you have to pay for them.
Right.
Yeah, because he said you have no, he basically told her she has no warranty.
Right, no warranty, and obviously, unless there's some huge issue, I cannot imagine that it would be. The other thing is, all these lawsuits would be self-funded, so it would make more sense just to repair it than it would be to spend the money. Yeah, that's my thought.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, I appreciate it. Love your show.
Seth.
Thank you.
So, thank you very much. I'm thinking that through. John, you're on the WHP 580. You have an alimony question? Hey, John.
John, yeah.
Yep.
This is me.
You want to talk about alimony?
Yeah. My ex-wife, I pay alimony to my ex-wife. I have been for several years now. And it turns out she's getting in poor health. And she's moving into assisted living. And if she goes into a nursing home, do I still have to pay alimony?
You can always try to modify the alimony.
Yeah.
So that's the short answer. So how long have you been paying alimony now?
Oh, probably, let's see, 65, at least 12 years.
Yeah.
Maybe longer.
Yeah.
I haven't figured it out exactly. I have to look up the paperwork.
Well, here's the answer. If your income's changed or her income's changed, etc., or conditions have changed, alimony can change. My problem with assisted living is she's probably going to be spending all the money she's getting, right?
Yeah.
So they may not let you out of alimony at that point.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, yeah, I know. My mother, she passed away some years ago, but she was she moved into the county home, and I guess there must have been she was living simply on Social Security, and I guess there's some kind of subsidy from the federal government that may have helped her too, because they never bothered the siblings or the kids, which is me. I was the only survivor.
All right, boss, I'm losing you here. All right, 540-0580. We get back from the break. We'll talk some more, answer your legal questions. In the meantime, you go to RomingerLaw.com. Of course, if you can hear this signal, you can hire us. 241-6070 is the office number, 241-6070. Talk line number remains 540-0580, and I'll see you guys in the next hour enjoying this sunny Saturday afternoon.